Yo, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Lenko Show. This is episode number 57, and we've actually come up for the title for this show before we've started. So, we're going to be talking about unlocking your speed, training smarter, not harder. And I'm glad to say a regular occurrence now. Chris is here again. How you doing, bro?
Hello, everybody. It's good to be consistent. I like being here. Actually, I always have good conversation. I like talking about this stuff. So,
Yeah,
and also, episode 57 being about speed, I feel like it stinks of Chris Lenkowski.
yeah, you're a pretty nifty guy, aren't you? Pretty quick.
Little fellow round your legs, they used to call me.
That's it.
I'm
Indeed.
Linford Christie. I've been known as the White Linford Christie back in
Yeah.
my day.
Care to go into how you got that nickname?
I have no idea. I have no idea where that
Oh,
came from.
yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. When we were kids and we were on holiday, I used to be flopping around in the pool. Think probably like 5 years old, maybe something like that. So you would have been about three, certainly very young, 3, 4, maybe 5 years old tops.
The beginning of my
Uh,
cerebral existence.
you were a top level escape artist at that point in time as well, where you were just beginning your career as an escape artist, sat in your pram with a lollipop by the side of the pool. Everyone's chilling, everyone's relaxing. Chris starts kicking his little legs, and you can see his brain's working, and he's thinking, I'm off. Before you know it, you're out your pram, legging it down the road, and mum or dad is generally having to chase after you. And you were quick, weren't you? You were quick. Even then, as a squishy little 3-year-old, you were fast lad.
Well, I had a lot of practice, apparently. Honestly, I recall going hell for leather, like sprinting around places. I don't ever recall like the escaping, the unbuckling the pram when people aren't looking and trying to just bomb it off. I don't remember trying to escape. I just remember sprinting. I just remember running around as fast as I could. That's what I
Just
remember.
enjoying running fast.
Yeah. And also, I would add to that. I mean, I've never explored it, but I have no idea where it came from either. I don't know. I don't know where that desire to just run away and run off came from, especially in a foreign country, because it's not the smartest thing to do, is it?
Not really, no. Consider
But then again,
what's happened
that's
to
me.
certain toddlers in recent history.
You know what? Without trying to offend anyone, if they'd have been doing the appropriate speed training,
Hey,
I think we might be
so,
clutching at straws there. But
this is so. When it comes to what can't even remember what I was going to say. Then my mind's just gone completely blank. I genuinely can't remember what I was going to say. Oh no, that was it. It's come back to me. So when it comes to siblings, so I was thinking like, where does that speed come from at such a young age, right? And when it comes to siblings, there is typically, and I remember, where did I hear this? This was on. I'm gonna have to pull up the audible book that I was listening to. I think it might have been the Talent Code where they were talking about siblings. There is typically a pattern as to where you were born in the hierarchy, like with your first, second, third, fourth, or fifth child, etc. And the better athletes tend to be born further down the chain. Obviously, not true in this case, but you are the faster athlete.
do you know what? Do you know what I would say? And this is like 100% my belief. I agree with that in the sense that obviously not I wasn't born a better athlete at all. But if you think about our childhood and growing up, I got a 2 year head start on everything because I was competing against you
Mhm.
and you're a pretty good athlete yourself. Maybe not so much at 3, but like all the way growing up, you were already very competitive. You were physically more capable and had more potential than the vast majority of other people. And then I got to grow up competing against that. And like we'd play football, we'd play sports, we'd run, we'd chase each other, we'd play tag together and all that stuff. So I got loads more exposure to like I remember playing football when I was 3 for that under 5s team.
Yeah,
Just
you were playing so like a year or 2 years ahead. No, a year ahead, were you? Because you was playing with the team that was like a year below me. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you were a cut above from a young age. And so the book is called The Talent Code by a guy called Daniel Coyle. So I definitely recommend giving it a listen if you are interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, typically, I think that is the reason for it. Not necessarily because, I mean, there are some genetic markers which change as people were born. So like there's a bit of a thing going on with how fat people can be. Like typically the first child is the fatter child. Yeah, true.
and
there is a reason for that. I can't remember what it was. Well, no, obviously because there are environmental circumstances, and I also believe in something called personal responsibility, which isn't necessarily encoded on the genetic level. Like it is something that you can take ownership over, and you can choose what you eat. For example, if I want to have my big bowl of crunchy nut, I can eat that if I want, although maybe not with sour milk. So yeah, I think obviously that competing with people who are bigger, faster, stronger, like it forces you to develop so much quicker because you have to keep up. You're playing catch up, you're playing keep up from a very early age. And with the right type of person in that kind of environment, it can actually result in very beneficial long-term adaptations. So for instance, yourself, like somewhat competitive, very sporty, wanted to be pushed and ultimately then have to live up to that. And because you stick to task and you experience a little bit of cheerfulness in the face of adversity, a little bit from the last episode there. You like that? You like that? Like that little link?
Love that.
Because you're able to stick with it, then ultimately you benefit from it. However, with the wrong type of person, someone that needs a bit of a confidence boost, who might be a little lower in ability level and not necessarily someone playing the long-term game, it could be a little bit demoralizing. And we can get into the whole lack of praise for high achievers or people that put effort in. We can get into that later on. So what we're going to do is we're essentially going to flip this episode compared to usual. So we're going to talk about the rubbish towards the end. So we want to try and keep it where we're going to stick to task. We're going to talk about speed, and then we will move on from that. How does that sound to you, bro?
Yeah, I like it.
I will also apologize. Like I understand and I know because I have listened back to bits of episodes that my microphone, for whatever reason, does not like to play ball and portray me on the same volume platform as the guests or yourself. So I can be quite hard to hear because I do a lot of talking. That's obviously not great. I know I've listened to podcasts before where I've been driving in my car and I've had to turn it up for one person in particular, and then all of a sudden someone else kicks in and speaks and it's like, whoa! And all of a sudden you're deaf.
It's quite
so
funny,
I apologize for that.
You've got a very fancy microphone in front of you and I'm just using AirPods.
Can you believe it? Like Rode, one of the finest microphones there is. It's even got like a guard on it to stop me from spitting all over it and slobbering at it, because obviously I'm a very drooly person. But yeah, for whatever reason, I think it's the way that we're recording it, so via Zoom. So I have changed a couple of settings. So hopefully this time the audible format, like, it's a lot easier for you to actually listen to and hear what I'm saying. So there we go. Sorry for that. Apologies.
The apologies accepted.
Chris, speed. I'm just going to interview you now. I'm just going to grill you. So you're fast, aren't you? Yeah.
I've been known to get from A to B fairly quickly.
What's your 100-meter PB, please?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what my 100-meter PB was, but I do remember that the last ProFit Sports Day thingy.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, there was a few numbers thrown about. I heard a 10.2 at one point, to which
no chance.
Well, I said if I was running a 10.200 meters, I won't be here at the ProFit Sports Day. I'll tell you that for free. But definitely, I've run sub 11 seconds. On numerous occasions.
And you have been known to kick ass at various school sports day competitions, in not just as representing yourself as a child, but also as an adult, pretending to be someone's dad.
Yes. Oh wow. As if I didn't know you knew about that story.
Oh, I know. And soon the listeners are going to hear as well. We're talking about, when we're talking about giving out medals to trans athletes competing as women, and here you are posing as a dad. Do you want to let the listeners in on this little story?
Do you know what? It's a brilliant story, this. So I don't know if you've heard all the details, but essentially, I was invited to go down to a sports day to partake in a parents/guardians race for someone that is very close to our family, for the main purpose of winning, but beating someone very, very specific who apparently takes their running very, very seriously. So I was like, yeah, I'll go down and I'll support. Like, in my head, I was thinking, I'm not going to run the race, obviously, but I'll go down and I'll definitely support it. So anyway, I went down and they called everyone up for this parents' race, whatever, what have you. And obviously, I stayed sat down, which the child that I was there supporting was like dragging me up onto the track, as was her mother. They were like, go on, you need to do it, you need to do it, you need to beat it. So this person that I'd been invited was obviously someone who was taking it very, very serious. I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but he'd got like running trainers on and shorts and like a climbable top, like as if he was there specifically to win that race. And he said that he was. So I actually started talking to him. He was a really nice guy, actually, but he said he was there specifically to win the race, not to support his child. Hence why I'd been invited as like a ringer. So I was like, well, yeah, okay, fine, go on then. And I got up and I was not intending on sprinting at all. I was intending on dossing the race and doing the bare minimum to come first, expecting that I wasn't going to need to actually sprint. So I'm stood there in my jeans, and I don't remember what trainers I had on. I might have had Stan Smiths on, the Adidas Stan Smiths or Gazelles or something. Not exactly running attire, and it was on grass, by the way. And I thought I'll set off at like a run pace, see where everyone's at. Most people will be behind me, so I'll just like jog it in, cruise to the end. So I was going to say the gun went off then. There wasn't a gun there. The whistle goes, so it's on your marks, get set, go. And I set off and I'm going at about 40% effort. And this guy to my right has taken off like an absolute rocket. I'm not kidding. He was not messing about. He was there to win. And I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna need to cover some ground here. So I started going faster and I was like, the guy was, I don't know how far ahead, but I thought I'm gonna have to take off and sprint to actually win this thing. So I kicked it up a gear. I went full speed. Like at that point, it was no longer about doing the bare minimum. It was about winning this thing. And obviously, like a rocket, full speed towards the edge. Now, if you imagine this track, it was a school field. It wasn't like an actual sports track or anything. They laid out a 100-meter track, whatever. But at the end, at the finish line, there was the finish line, obviously, and then about 5 meters of flat, straight grass surface. And then there was a steep incline, like a hill, that was like a flower bed. And they'd got like all these pretty flower arrangements and stuff like that. And as I found as well, some spiky stuff too. Now, obviously, because I'd had to take off for the last like 50 meters of this race, I was going full tilt straight through the finish line, straight up this hill, straight through these flowers, and then eventually managed to slow down. And I turned around and I'd got rips in my jeans and blood all over my jeans and spikes sticking out of me. And, well, spikes, they were thorns. But I come down and I'd beaten this guy. Obviously, I'd won around. And the head teacher's like, well done, that was fast. Who exactly are you here with? I was like, oh, I'm here with such and such. And like, oh, okay, very nice, very nice. And she was like, do you know that you're bleeding? So, looked down and I was like, oh, yeah. So, yeah, good times. I won a bottle of wine that I obviously gave to the mother and some fancy chocolates and some flowers. So And obviously gained some self-respect and pride. Good times, yeah. It was very funny, actually, very funny. But so at the end of the race, obviously, I complained to the lady that I was there with. I was like, I thought that I was going to be able to doff that race. You made it sound like all I needed to do was just rock up and just put on some kind of jog. And then she was like, oh no, that guy that was winning was a semi-professional footballer or played for such and such a team. And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. So yeah, that's that story. Good times.
Very nice. So let me ask you a question. How so fast?
How so fast? How am I so fast?
Yep. How'd you get fast? Go on.
So the first thing that I would say is my sprinting technique is aside from I've not been coached by Michael Jordan or Michael Jordan. I don't know why I said Michael Jordan, but aside from having an elite sprinter like actually assess my technique is pretty nails. If you look at my posture and stride length, like it's a long stride length, my knees come high, and there's obviously a lot of force being generated. Like my actual sprinting technique, the gait is very, very efficient. I would say the word is. So I didn't know much about this until obviously I got older and studied like actual technique and sports science and things like that. I realized that actually a lot of the time is spent in the air, and you actually want to be spending most of your time in the air, and then the ground contact wants to be absolutely minimal. So in English, if people don't understand that, you're looking to produce as much force as you can with as little time as possible connected to the floor, and then you're trying to be suspended in the air. If you actually watch slow-mos of, obviously Usain Bolt's a great one to watch, like any top sprinters or anything like that, you'll find that it's a lot like flying through the air when they're running at top speed. So there's obviously
it's true. They just look like they just glide, don't they?
Yeah, like it's technique. So I recall I was telling someone this story last week when I stopped sprinting at like a county level and stuff. I was beaten by a kid who was younger than me, and we were at a track event, and he'd basically worn ankle weights for his heats. To which I was like, "What is this guy doing?" Anyway, he beat me in the final. And my poor little ego couldn't take it because I was used to winning so much. But so when I run, I do not look like I am jogging. I look like I'm really trying to run fast. I'm not saying I look like I'm running fast, but I look like I'm trying to run fast. When he went past me, he looked like he was jogging. It was so effortless. It was like seamless. And obviously, therefore, he really was gliding through the air. So yeah, obviously technique, big part of it. And then the other thing that I would say is I am massively an anaerobic athlete. So very powerful, like strong, fast, not so much on the aerobic side. So anything that's like 20 seconds or less, I am in my prime. Anything that's 5 reps or less, anything that's longer, I'm not necessarily primed for that. But my point to that is if you train specifically in that anaerobic energy system, which I spent a lot of time doing, you will become anaerobic, and you're obviously looking at lifting heavy weights at high intensity, performing things like quickly for high intensity, and stuff like that, and spending less time doing longer bouts and longer duration stuff, things like that, which obviously is training specifically that anaerobic pathway and therefore making you faster, more powerful. You can obviously produce more force. The other thing I would say is obviously when I say about being massively an anaerobic athlete, like you can tell by my physique, it's kind of like I'm not huge, but there's quite a lot of muscle mass, and obviously muscle's going to create and produce more force. So that's another thing to it as well. And then outside of that is I have done a lot of sprint training and speed work, acceleration work, and like I said, in the weight room, I've done a lot of heavy lifting and high intensity stuff for those short durations. So I was pretty good at it anyway, got a lot of experience doing it, and then I kept doing it. So got a lot of experience doing those specific things that help with those stuff as well.
And I think that's a crucial point to it. So obviously, like when we're born, most people, we have a balance of muscle fibers. Like let's say, you might be 50-50, you've got a load of slow twitch, you got a load of fast twitch. Depending on your environmental circumstances and your training growing up, you can shift the balance and the bias of those fiber types. So there's a percentage of them that kind of sit in that mid range that have the ability to adapt and become more sort of type 1 or type 2. And that is dictated to by your training and the style of your training and how frequently you hit those specific stimuli. That'd be the word, that would be the plural, wouldn't it? The stimuli. So how key do you think that is in terms of growing up as a kid, just sprinting on a frequent basis? How, like, even without necessarily professional coaching or elite level coaches, like even the amount of coaches that have described the way that Usain Bolt runs, he's not necessarily the most efficient, but would you correct him on anything? So how important is that? Just sprint frequently as a kid?
It's the most important. It's kind of like is it Matthew Syed who talks about 10,000 hours before you become a master. Like, in order to get good at anything, just start doing it. And we said the same thing. I think it was coming out of lockdown when we were talking about people doing like long distance running and stuff. The first step is to just start doing that thing. And then the more and more you do it, without worrying about what the outcome is, without worrying about, oh, I didn't do that fast enough, or I didn't do it slow enough, or anything like that. You just do it, get time and experience doing it. And then when you've got the time and experience, you can then start like focusing on certain things and harnessing certain things and correcting certain things. And a lot of the time, when you've done a lot of it anyway, like, so for me, obviously doing a lot of running away from parents and running around in foreign countries and stuff, growing up. And then if you are just exposing yourself by watching sprinting and watching athletics meets and seeing all that stuff, all that stimuli is going in, you will naturally learn and build new motor pathways and neural pathways and make more associations even without doing it. So you could literally be sat there watching an event or watching something, but because you've got enough of a kind of background, I guess the best way to describe this is if you didn't know a language at all and you heard random words, you wouldn't understand what the hell's going on. But if you knew like some of the key terms or anything like that, you could kind of maybe piece together something from what someone was saying. Wouldn't necessarily be right, but it's far easier then to have an understanding. It's the exact same thing. It's just do it first, create exposure, gain experience, and then you can start trying to refine stuff. And unfortunately, if I've got 100 hours of practicing sprinting and doing sprint specific stuff and like a huge background of just running around and therefore being probably pretty active, pretty physical, pretty healthy, I'm in a much better position than someone who's got like 5 hours of practice. And that goes for things outside of sprinting as well, of course.
Yeah, that's it. And I think this is something else from the book, The Talent Code. Like, if your body has a specific pathway for and a specific pattern and a code, if you like, for every single movement you perform. So running would be its own code. Jogging would be its own code. Walking would be its own code. Sprinting would be another code. And even though each of them kind of filters in to the skills and qualities required for the next one, i.e. the swinging and movement of the arms and legs, there are still their own specificities within each of those pathways. So if you were to look at a dog walking versus a dog trotting versus it at full flight, the footwork, the coordination, everything changes just a fraction. So the more maximal high-speed running you do, the more you're laying down and reinforcing that pathway. And think about it as building it into your nervous system, and then you coat that pathway with more and more myelin, which helps the transmission of that pathway, helps keep it faster. It's a lot stronger. It's a lot more durable as well. So, and the more you do it, that just develops over time and keeps developing. It continues to develop as you progress as an athlete and as a person. So on that same note, in terms of the mistakes that people are making, this is something I've noticed myself with training. Like I've made this mistake in my own training in the past. I see it in a lot of people's training right now. And I have a lot of people that come to me with these kinds of problems because this is the way they train, where they fall into the trap of the work they should be doing very, very fast, they're making it slow. And the work they should be doing very, very slow, they're making it too fast. So they're training in that middle ground, that medium effort zone, that sub-maximal zone. I might just call that, we could call that the CrossFit zone, really, couldn't we? Where you're basically pacing yourself through a workout, working to a certain threshold and never actually pushing to your max. Do you think that that has a detrimental effect? Have you seen the same sort of thing?
Yeah. So one of the things that my coach Matt Dewhurst was actually saying to me last week was about like there's this new, like, I guess people, I don't want to call it a phenomenon because it's not, but like people have started incorporating loads of zone 2 training over the last couple of years. Like it's become much of a bigger thing. Now, one of the things that I've heard Matt say, and alongside other people as well, is loads of people have suddenly started doing all this zone 2, which is right, by the way. It definitely helps. But if you practice doing things at a slow speed and continually do them at a slow speed, you are training yourself to move at a slow speed, which does not translate across to high intensity, which I'm not saying you need high intensity all the time, but you need to practice certain movements and certain things at a slow pace. Things need to be patterned and grooved and rehearsed at a slow pace. And then in order to actually efficiently translate across to doing things at high intensity, you have to practice them at that high intensity, at full speed or at maximum intensity or what have you. So yeah, I guess in your response to like the CrossFit training zone, yeah, absolutely. If you spend all your time moving at between 50 and 80%, you're obviously you are neglecting everything from 0 to 49% and everything above that 80%. So when it is required of you to go at 85%, you will be far less efficient at it. And exactly to touch on your previous point as well, like it's hugely something like sprinting and strength work is so primarily like driven by the nervous system. Like it's so taxing on the nervous system that if you're not visiting that like frequently, you just will not have the same level of coordination and you won't have access to the neural pathways as efficiently. You won't be able to move as well or coordinate at those maximal efforts. Like you just won't.
So a couple of little things I picked up on there. So when you were talking about the zone 2 work, you actually reminded me of a few things. So number one, in terms of why you would do zone 2 work, you're trying to build up a capacity for being able to do more work. You're looking after your heart, you're looking after your lungs, you're looking after your aerobic energy system, aren't you? Ultimately, you're trying to be healthy. And the way that registers, like if you were to do a VO2 max test, if you were to do it whilst running, which is the typical way of doing it, especially if you're wearing sort of like the gas mask and not just doing a predicted VO2 based off distance covered in a given amount of time or anything, and you get a specific reading on it, your score on running would be different to your score on, let's say, a bike or another activity, for example, because your efficiency at performing that specific movement, that specific skill of either running or cycling or, I don't know, cross-country skiing or whatever it might be, your efficiency at that movement pattern would be different in each one. So if you're not very proficient at running, your VO2 max score would come out far lower than if you did it on a bike, if you were more proficient on a bike, for example. So when it comes to zone 2 work, I would suggest, especially for footballers, if you are going to be working at some lower speeds and hitting some zone 2 work, pick a less efficient movement skill, such as, it might be biking, it might be working on the assault bike, and work at a slow speed on something like that, or even swimming, where it's not going to detract from your running capability. I mean, running's quite hard on the body anyway. We think about the amount of ground contacts and the amount of work you're going to get through in training. Pick something that's easier on the knees, the ankles, the calves, give your body that extra recovery time. And then when it does come to your running work, make sure you're actually working fast. Like really be pushing yourself, whether it's interval times, 400-meter efforts, 800-meter efforts, absolute max out sprints of 30, 60 or 100, 150 meters, for example. Save your submaximal work for activities other than running. So don't just go out and do a straight 10K. Would you agree that that's a fairly useful way to go?
Yeah, I don't think I would tweak that at all based on what you've said.
Yeah. And then the other thing with any training, like once you warmed up, sprint first. Like you mentioned about the demand it has on the nervous system and the body, 100% sprint first. Don't save it for the end of a training session, because I can guarantee if you've done the rest of your training session properly, you won't be sprinting. You just won't be sprinting.
I think a really good example for stuff like that is when you look at, if you want to know about like improving speed, obviously you want to look at like the people who are the fastest. So whatever element, but if we go with 100-meter sprinters right now, take a look at their training days. They're absolutely grueling. But if you look at them, a lot of the time, they'll do whatever distances they're doing, which usually will be longer than 100 meters. But they will recover as fully as possible in order to maintain that same output. There's no point these runners that are trying to like achieve top speed for a specific event. There's no point them running at like 80% of what their actual potential could be on that day if they just recovered properly and then gone. Like there might be if they're doing like speed endurance and stuff like that. But for a 100-meter sprinter, you're looking at, you want to go like as hard as you can, recover fully, go as hard as you can, recover fully.
Yeah. I think that's important. Like you still have to be working. Like if you were to take it into account of percentages and running times, you want to be performing those runs at 90% or more of your best time.
Yeah.
And this is something I've used with clients in training. And you might measure their time for a 40-meter sprint or a 60-meter sprint. You measure the time for it. Then as soon as they drop out of that bracket by 10%, done. Like you might prescribe a certain number, or might prescribe a window of repetitions, like 6 to 10 reps. For example, that's the kind of zone we're looking to be in. If they finish rep 6 and they've dropped below that time, I might let them have another one if it's tight. And then as soon as they're underneath it again, that's it. It's done. Like it's relaxed, because the only thing you're going to succeed in doing now is getting yourself tired. And this is something when it comes to football training, and ultimately everyone wants to be quicker around the pitch. You're typically looking at, you're doing a training session, then you go, right, we're going to do some speed work. And I've got a lot of my like netball athletes as well. They say, oh, we did 100 court sprints. And I'm like, did you? I don't think you did. If you actually measured it, I don't think there were sprints. I think you covered the court fairly fast a few times, but you weren't absolutely sprinting. You weren't absolutely maxing out. So you're not actually training speed. So something I try and incorporate into every warm-up we do, whether it's on a match day or a training day, is we will finish the warm-up with some absolute max effort sprints. So they're always hitting that stimulus 2-3 times a week. If we're playing 2 games in a week and 2 training sessions in a week, they're hitting that stimulus 4 times in a week. And then it's just a case of managing your loading. So hit the stimulus often, hit it frequently, hit it hard. Make sure you're actually recovering in between, and do your sprint work at the start of your training sessions. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, right, well, we'll do some extra sprints at the end. They will be submaximal.
Yeah, I think it's dead simple. Like, look at it. Like, if I asked you to sprint at full speed for 20 seconds, like, just try doing that. Whether it's running or on a bike or on a rower, you will not maintain peak power for 20 seconds. And you will not recover in 20 seconds. You will not recover in 1 minute. You will need far longer. So take the rest that you need. And then, like Alex said, if you're slipping out of the time frame and you're not achieving the same scores, you obviously need a little bit longer rest. So Yeah, and it's dangerous as well. Like if you try doing that, like repeated, like some people are doing like with 3 workouts a day and stuff now, you're gonna hurt yourself because there's such a high demand, and you're probably gonna need about 4 days sleep.
Yeah. So that, I mean, what you were saying there, that's true. You're essentially just going to beat yourself into a hole, aren't you? Where if you're training 3 times a day and you're trying to incorporate sprint work and you're not actually recovering from day to day, you're just going to kill yourself and end up like you looked the other day in your on your Instagram after your competition with your
I still feel that way today.
wearing your fancy recovery boots.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely wiped. So I think in order to be efficient, what I would suggest, right, for anyone that's looking at incorporating sprint work into their training, start off whatever training you're doing now, break it up. So if you need to train 6 days a week, let's say you've got 2 sport specific training days where you might be playing football, cricket, netball, tennis, baseball, American football, all that, anything. If you've got your 2 training days for that, keep those in. Don't touch those. You need your sport specific practice. Then look at potentially having 2 gym sessions maximum. So 1 for lower body, 1 for whole body. And then prioritize over your gym sessions, prioritize 2 specific sprint sessions spaced throughout the week where you're doing them probably after a rest day or a recovery day, and you're going to be going into them fresh. Do those, make those your priority, hit those. And then if you can get a gym session in, make the lower body session a priority, do the whole body session, working some power-based movements as your second gym session off the back of that. That will help give you enough of a stimulus and recover in between, as long as you're not some sort of weird vegetable type person that's never trained before. All right. As long as you've got a reasonable athletic base, you will be fine with that. You will cope easily with that demand. And remember, it's about being faster. It's about working smarter, not harder. So if you're getting worried or you're having panic attacks because you're not getting sweaty and you're not like dribbling in a pukey mess at the end of your session, fine. Don't worry about it. Relax. You're working on getting faster, not just getting sweaty and out of breath. Any more advice you have for that, Chris?
Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned about like using your anaerobic pathway and specific training and stuff like that. When it comes to like getting faster, etc., using the force velocity curve is like, it makes it really, really simple. So you're either looking at moving something really, really, really heavy, or you're looking at moving really, 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 really fast. Like, because the two, it's just the requirement for energy and intensity that you're working at. That's what we're talking about when we're saying practice being at that high intensity. And we're not saying like Alex said, we're not talking about like CrossFit or High Rocks redlining. We're not talking about smashing yourself over a 15-minute WOD. We're talking about like, specifically if we're using the force velocity curve, we're looking at like a 1 to 3 rep, like heavy tonnage slinging tin, or you're looking at moving as quickly as possible at your low weight. You're looking at like 30-40% of 1 rep max and stuff. But I'm sure we'll go through the force velocity curve at some point, maybe today, maybe another podcast. But for anyone who's listening, you're not sure, just Google it, and there's a simple image and you can't go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, we can touch on it slightly now if you want, because we're going to go through some of like technical drills and placement drills. So if you're doing those, slow them right down. If you're going to practice, like you mentioned before, that your posture when it comes to sprinting is absolutely mint. So you need to be able to hit that. Work on that from the start as just being in an isometric position where you're not actually moving. Practice standing still in that upright posture with a high hip, high knee position, and get that nailed. Once you've done that, you can start working through the specific pattern of placing your foot, extending out in front of yourself, flexing at the hip, straightening your leg, getting that ball contact or getting that contact on the ball of your foot as you sweep through, and then kicking back up into that start position. Practice working through that really slowly and really smoothly. This is what we're talking about when it comes to training the slow stuff really slowly. Similar sort of thing like you were talking there about the force velocity curve. If you're learning how to do weightlifting, again, another big problem with weightlifting, a lot of people kind of jump in towards the upper end of their 1 rep max and then thinking they're just going to rep out on that. Don't do it. Groove the technique, build that movement pattern, work at lightweight, work slowly to start with, get loads of holds, loads of time in the correct positions, and then earn the right to move slightly quicker and then add weight and repeat, rinse, repeat, build on that foundation.
Yeah, what we're talking now is the difference between exercising and just doing stuff at the start and actually properly training. Now you can look at like refining stuff and you're actually going for a specific outcome. So make sure you are working on that thing that's going to get you that outcome, and don't try and cheat the system. Don't try and cheat the process.
Yep. And speaking of the, with regards to the force velocity curve you mentioned there, really slow, really heavy deadlift. Great example. On the opposite end of the spectrum, really light, really fast, snatches. So think about how you're going to incorporate those into the balance of your training. If you're naturally already very fast twitch, very bouncy, and you're going to benefit from more strength work, add in a little bit of deadlifting. If you're already a pretty, really strong, but somewhat slow and cumbersome athlete, a little bit like me, that's where you then need to consider adding in more of your sprinting, more of your snatching, more of your explosive lifts, explosive jumps, repeated jumps where you're getting off the ground quickly, and pushing on from there.
Yeah, and again, just to touch on what Nick Davis said 2 podcasts ago, when Alex says snatches, he's not talking 30 snatches for time. He's talking moving 1 singular snatch or maybe 3 to 6 snatches very, very efficiently and very, very quickly. And then resting and recovering, like we've spoken about, in order to be able to be as precise and as coordinated as you need to be to execute them to pretty much the same degree again.
Again, quality work. Quality work. That's all we're asking for here, isn't it? That's all we're asking for.
Simple, not easy.
That's it. What I want to go through now is the actual need for speed. So why do we need to be quick? Well, very simply, if you can run at 30 kilometers an hour and you're in a one-on-one battle with someone that can only run at 26, like you could pretty much walk past them. Like they're never going to catch you. You know you're going to run away from them. They're never going to chase you. Or if they do chase you, they're never going to get close. You could just skip past them. It's the difference. I don't know if, and I don't think you saw it. I know we were speaking about it briefly at the start, but the other day on Monday Night Football, they got Cara and G Nev talking about the Man United treble winning team of 1999 and forming 11 between that team and the Man City team that is going to win the treble this year. And they are, aren't they, really? It sickens me. They're going to win the treble.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Not on this podcast.
It's depressing. It's depressing. I don't know what we're going to do when it happens. But anyway, they were combining the 11 between those two teams. And I'm pleased to say that Gary Neville, when he came out with his team, he literally just had all Man United treble winning team from 99. So he didn't include any of the City players from this season. And but he did do a backup 11. He basically said that that's because, that team did the treble. This team haven't done it yet. So therefore, once they do it, then he'll consider adding a few of the boys in. And basically, he left the right back spot empty. And if you think, and then they had a bit of a conversation between Kyle Walker and Gary Neville, and it was up to Jamie Carragher really as to who he'd pick. And it kind of came down to, it might depend on the opposition, because if it's the opposition is someone like Vinicius Jr. or Kylian Mbappe, you know that those two guys are going to be lightning quick, and there's not a chance Gary Neville's keeping up with them. So they just kick it past him, run around him, easy all day long. So I feel like that kind of highlights the importance of simply just being quick. And it might make up for a lack of technical quality a little bit, simplifies things. Oh, that's it's worth adding this as well. That's the other trap to fall into in field sport athleticism. So if you are lightning fast and you're constantly playing against opposition that are quicker than you, it's very easy to fall into the trap of just doing that kick and chase, just run around people rather than developing ways of getting past people who are equally quick. So I think that, do you think that's a common thing? Would you agree with that? That people that aren't physically gifted, people that aren't as athletic or as quick tend to be slightly better technicians because they have to make up for their, I don't really want to refer to them as inadequacies, but.
No, but you're 100% right. You're 100% accurate. Like, you look at players like Gabriel Agbonlahor, tore it up for a season because all he used to do was just kick the ball about 20 yards in front of him and just bomb it. And it was efficient. It was easy. Like, why not? If that's what you can do. Whereas it is harder for you if you don't have that like trait. Like, you're not physically as fast. You do have to become technically better because you're not going to be able to just run past someone or chase something down, or like, you will have to actually be better on the ball. So yeah, and I would say that, like, for me, when I was playing football, I did the exact same thing. I figured out, especially when I was a lot younger, I figured out that because I was so much faster than anyone, I just knocked the ball past them, because it's like, why wouldn't you? If it's that easy to do and you have that and they're not going to catch you, it's easy. 7 goals. Let's go. Just kick it past them, shoot and score.
It's also a really good way to get yourself kicked when you're playing against your older brother as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I tell you what as well, if you, like, a lot of times you will find, and this isn't just exclusive to football, but you will find when you're talking about like opponents' teams and stuff like that, it will come up, this person is very, very quick. So watch that. Make sure they're not getting past you. Make sure you're marking them or staying behind them or goal side or whatever, or give them a kick, give them a knock. Make sure they're feeling uncomfortable. Like, it's one of the things that you would highlight because it is so essential.
Absolutely. So in terms of top speed versus top speed, make sure you have a faster top speed. And then don't neglect the technical aspects of your game either. So the final component of this is making sure you, like, the higher your top speed is, the better that can actually be for more endurance-based efforts. So especially, again, going into field sport stuff, because that's literally what I know. If you can run at 30 kilometers an hour versus someone else that can run at 26, when it comes to both of you cruising along at 15 kilometers an hour and taking it easy, that's 50% for athlete A. And I think it's close to like 65, 70% for athlete B that can only run at 26. So running at lower speeds is far less effort as well. So it only makes sense to have faster top speed. And you can guarantee, like Eliud Kipchoge and a lot of the like top distance runners, like, when we say just go and set the treadmill to the 2-hour marathon pace and you get on it and it's literally a sprint for most people. It's like unbelievably quick, like 22, 21 kilometers per hour. 22 kilometers an hour.
I'm not sure what it is, but it's fast, and you can find videos of people not even getting to the speed, let alone holding it.
It's quick, isn't it? So, like, just think, even if you are going to be running for a long period of time, you still need to be fast to be able to hold that top speed. So practice your running, do it a lot, do it frequently, get stronger or bouncier. And that's a good way to frame it.
Do you know what else that I've not even thought about touching on in relation to the advantages of being of speed? Like I said, kind of with the speed training that you do and tapering, kind of like working on those pathways, like, it all kind of ties together. Like, you're more than likely, if you've got a higher top speed, chances are you are going to have at least greater potential for muscle mass and things like that. And if you think outside of just football, other sports as well, when we bring in scientific equations such as things like mass times acceleration. Did I ever tell you about when I played that inter-house rugby match?
No, you did not.
So played an inter-house rugby match one time. This was back in high school. And obviously, me being fast, it became very useful to have me on the wing to just blitz past people, get the ball out to Chris, he'll blitz past people, score a try, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Now, on the one occasion that I had to tackle someone who was bigger than me, when you understand science to a degree, you know with sheer confidence that me trucking at someone, let's say, I don't know, whatever speed, let's just say as an example, let's say 25 miles an hour, let's just like just a random figure, and someone's moving towards me at 10 miles an hour, and they weigh maybe 2-3 kilos more than me, a little bit taller, I can say with certainty that me moving significantly faster towards him than he is towards me, that I will win that battle when I tackle him. And that goes for other things. It goes to things like football and stuff like that when you're tackling people. And obviously rugby was that example there. But yeah, you've got all that stuff that you can think about as well. You're going to be able to produce more force. Easy.
It's all about disconnecting your opponent as well, going through them, removing. Like I mentioned to someone the other day about if they wanted to be a linebacker, their job is to basically be a chiropractor and rearrange people's spines and hit through them. Like that's their one job.
Like it.
So yeah, and obviously the key component to speed, like recover, fully recover, take your time. You have to slow your training down. Like I was sat there in the gym the other day because I am trying to get quicker. I'm trying to be a little bit faster. No, and I know I'm not the fastest, but I feel like I can always do more. I'm very good at lifting heavy, lifting slow, and that's my comfort zone. But being bouncy, being fast, being a good sprinter, not so much. So anyway, I've got everything set up. I'm doing my work, kind of sat off to the side. I've done my set. I'm like, just sat there, watching everyone else jumping around, skipping, playing around on the barbells and skiing and doing all their like sweaty stuff. And I am sat there. I could not have been more chilled, more relaxed. I could, I could have been lying down. To be fair, that would have probably only been the only thing that would have done it. But you know, when you feel out of place, you feel like people are going to be like, is he going to be looking at him thinking, is he even fucking training that guy? Is he doing anything? What's he here for? Him, all he's doing is sat on that box. I haven't seen him do a single thing. The entire time he's been there, all he's done is just sit down. Here I am, bursting a lung on this. Oh, you got to be willing to pull with that if you want to get quicker. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and I guess it's like if you look at whenever people take the piss out of powerlifters, because that's what powerlifters do, but they're training for power, which is just, it's not like top end speed like sprint and stuff, but it's the same thing. It's the high intensity. Well, actually, it depends what kind of powerlifter we're talking about here, because sometimes it's just trying to move weight over as small a distance as possible. But for the vast majority of them that are actually properly powerlifting, they are moving as much weight as possible and
That's
trying
it,
to
isn't
move
it?
it quickly.
It's the amount of effort required, isn't it? So
Yeah.
anyway, that concludes our brief discussion on speed. I think that's probably how long's that taken us? Like 50 minutes to go through that. So hopefully
A
there's
very,
some
very slow discussion about speed.
Do you know what? That's it though. You've got to slow things down. Keep them slow. So hopefully there's been some useful stuff in you in there. Now, I did mention at the start, we're basically doing this podcast backwards. We talked about the useful stuff. Now we're going to jibber jabber about random shit. Now, we're going to kick this off. So Chris had a competition at the weekend, but before that, on Saturday, I was with him. And he had a run-in with a former inmate of someone who was serving time at his Majesty's pleasure. Didn't you, Chris?
Yeah.
Care to explain?
Well, we were walking through Manchester and just some guy, never met before, never seen him before. Just kind of, he was walking in front of us. He wasn't even looking at us at first. He sort of turned around and was just like, imagine thinking you're going to get 2 to 5 years and you get away, you're walking free. So we just congratulated him, just like, buzzing, mate. What's your plans? Are you going to go and celebrate? And yeah, he looked fairly happy with the response. So yeah, good deed for the day.
He was absolutely buzzing. He was absolutely buzzing, the lad, wasn't he?
Well, you would be, wouldn't you?
And I mean, I've got to say, like, I think I said this to you at the time, but he could not have bumped into and said that to a nicer person, could he? In Manchester Town Centre at that moment in time, like it had to be you. You were just that person for him to speak to there and then. You made his, like, the look on his face, like he was already buzzing. But when he saw you say that to him, he was like, "Oh, fucking cheers, mate."
You know what? I think I teased with you afterwards. I was like, we could have probably asked him. We could have asked him as a joke. But did you do it? Were you guilty?
Well. So the first, like when he said that to you, I heard it because I was just behind you, wasn't I? And then I said to him, I was like, "Yeah, make sure you stay out, mate. All right, you look after yourself. Don't be doing anything silly." And then we walked off, and then you said, "Did you do it though? Did you do it? What did you do? You naughty boy." But you couldn't have said it to a nice person. I think you made his day. So well done. And then on Sunday, you had your competition, didn't you? How did that go? Because you've looked pretty forlorn over the last couple of days.
Yeah, it went well. It went very well. It went maybe a little too well. I have been on a serious. Like I feel like without being ill, I have felt very, very ill over the last couple of days, and it comes back to that speed stuff we were talking about, the neurological demand, the output. Like, I'm just absolutely smashed. My legs are nothing short of discombobulated. Like, it's what is it? It's Wednesday now, so it's been 3 days, well, 2.5 days. There was a lot of squatting, and yeah, my legs are absolutely smashed. My brain's smashed. I feel like I need to sleep for about 24 hours, and I need to have about 8,000 calories. So that's currently like where my body is at.
How are you getting on with those calories? Are you making any headway? You done it yet?
To be honest, no. So like for me, post comp and stuff like that, I like to try and get back to normal eating as fast as possible, and then a few days later, I'll start like adding more and more things. So I think after the comp, we went for an Almost Famous in Manchester, which is just like a dirty, greasy burger and some chips just to get some calories back in, and then try and get back on normal food. If I'm honest, my body has felt, like I said, it's felt a little bit ill. So in terms of like digesting things and stuff like that, I feel like my stomach's like a little bit smaller, like struggling to eat as much. So kind of not trying to force anything down, if that makes sense. Trying to drip feed things slowly. So I have had obviously increased calories, but I've not done what a lot of people might think of doing, having like 6,000 calories in one day, because I think that would equally just make me feel shit. I've been having like, say, for example, rather than, I don't actually track my intake, but I have pretty much the same thing every day. Rather than having 2,500, I'm having like 3,000 a day. So I'm eating more than I normally would, but trying to make sure it's still good stuff, normal stuff.
Yeah. And you came second as well, didn't you? A good effort, wasn't it? Is that right? Second, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was out of between 50 and 60. I think a couple of people didn't show up on the day. So yeah, second place overall. Very happy with that.
That's mint. Why didn't you win?
Why didn't I win? That's a great question. So it's funny. So one of the events, did I tell you what the workouts were?
I think you might have mentioned a couple of them.
Yeah, so I remember telling you at that meze place the day before. So the main thing that I was focused on was that event 2 into 3, which was 2 scores. Workout 2 is a 500-meter row for time. And then the second you get off the rower, you are into a 15-minute AMRAP of thrusters and wall balls. So for people that don't know what they are, that is squatting down with a barbell in a front rack, so across the top of your chest, the bar's in front of you. So you front squatting down to the bottom position, and it has to be the bottom position, because if it's less than the bottom position, it's a no rep, and you have to do it again. And then you stand the barbell back up and press it out overhead. And that was at 50 kilograms. So it was 500-meter row into 8 reps at 50 kilograms, 20 wall balls, which is the same movement. Again, if you don't know what that is, it's a squat down with a ball on top of your chest at a lightweight, and then standing it up and throwing it to hit a target above you. It was 20 of them, and then back to the row for 400 meters. And it was just an engine workout, engine obviously being the CrossFit term. So it was, how long can you sustain the pattern for while your heart rate is highly elevated and you are beyond your lactate threshold. But to give you an example, and to answer your question of why didn't I win, we knew going into this that was not going to be the workout for me, because like I said previously, I'm very anaerobic. So the 500-meter row very much stinks of Chris Lenkowski, but a 15-minute AMRAP very much does not. If it was a 2-minute AMRAP, maybe so. But I think also what comes with that is understanding the consequences of your decisions, and knowing that if an anaerobic person is to twat a 500-meter row at full tilt, doesn't really matter what you ask them to do after that, they are not going to be in a very good way. And I was not in a very good way. It's been videoed. And you know, I went to the wrong bar to thruster. I then walked to the wrong rower on the way back. There was a part where I dropped down onto one knee, which is the worst thing to do in the middle of doing loads of squatting patterns. I was knackered. I was, honestly, that is, and I say this honestly to everyone listening, that is the worst I've ever felt. And I'm going to circle back to this in a second, but to give you an example, so I finished in the top 5 in every single event, except from, I won the row, I came first, and then I came 32nd in the AMRAP. So there's an example of how it killed me. So had I come maybe even 25th or something like that, or were I a more balanced athlete and come maybe like 5th in the row and then like 7th or 10th in the AMRAP after that, I would have absolutely demolished the field. Well, I don't know that for sure, but if I'd have been in the top 5 for all of them, obviously I think I was like 3 points off winning. So yeah, but yeah, so just circling back there, a couple of people saying about like, how did it feel? And a lot of people say about, I don't know if you've heard, you will have heard this, you work in the fitness industry, Bulgarian split squats are awful and people hate them. I think that's generally the thing that people hate the most. So I want you to imagine you're doing a set of Bulgarian split squats as heavy as possible at slow tempo. So you've generated shit tons of lactic acid in the quads. Then I want you to imagine that feeling is not only in your quads, it's in your arse when you're rowing, and you are rowing a lot. It's in your lats because you're pulling. It's in your lungs, which I cannot describe a feeling like it. It's around your heart because your heart's going at about 3,000 beats per minute, obviously scientifically inaccurate, don't quote me. And it's in your throat as well because you're not really able to breathe. And if anyone's ever trained to a point where they are close to passing out, that's kind of where I was at. And then trying to sustain that for another 12 minutes, another 13 minutes, 13 and a half minutes, it was a world of pain. And I think the big thing with it, and the thing that I'm most proud of, is I knew it was going to be a world of pain, and my coach knew it was going to be a world of pain. And he asked me before, and he said, "What's the plan with this show?" I was like, "Find out what kind of man I am and deal with the consequences after." That's what he said. He was like, "That's it. You just got to accept that there's going to be consequences to going that fast on the road, but deal with it when you get there." And yeah. So it really helped having him there and having all the people there, because obviously I had a lot of people watching. Like,
So it's a perfect example of, when we were talking about speed work earlier, and you're absolutely sending it at top speed, you then cannot perform until you fully recover. So if you go maximal, you cannot then work at close to maximal or even the upper end of your submaximal capabilities in the time following that, until you need to fully recover from it. But that's a perfect example of flying too close to the sun. And all I can say is I'm proud of you. Very proud of you. That's the way we do it.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely send it, deal with the consequences later. I think it's the perfect way to go about it. You
so
also
on that note, it was a 127 row.
Well, that's a pretty good effort.
Bear in mind, I'm 5'8.5".
That's a real good effort. I think
so. If you fancy giving it a go, and then I'm sure if I wasn't pre-fatigued and I didn't have a 15-minute AMRAP, I could maybe do a 125. But we'll find out. I
was going to say, I think my PB for that is around. It's either 124 or 125.
Nice.
Average me a row, and I remember dying. Actually, did I remember dying and then coming back immediately?
This is it. You got to get off the row and straight into thrusters. it makes it different.
Talking about dying, well, there's a couple of things on this actually. I had a very close experience on Monday, so you know that I take my dog training.
Yes,
and we do protection work. I assist in the protection work as being the helper. So I wear the sleeve, run around, get chased, get bitten by dogs. Anyway, just to point out for everyone listening, like, this isn't some sort of weird sick biting thing or some crazy participation thing I do for it. Like, it's actually, you teach the dog, it's a game. It's not an irresponsible animal that can't think. It's a game. It's a game of play and prey for a pad or a sleeve or a toy. We're not teaching dogs to just go and randomly bite people. This being a perfect example. So there's an exercise in the protection where, imagine a football pitch, and then you've got hides, like little teepees, little pods that you can go and that someone can go and stand in. Hide a human. That's why they're called a hide. They're placed sort of on the sideline at intervals, so the dog can then run a diagonal pattern around the hide all the way down the field until they find the helper, the person with the sleeve. Now, yes. Now, what happened in this particular situation was I was hiding in the hide, did the first one. The dog came running around. I ran out of it to get the dog to chase me, bites the sleeve. I have a little play fight with the dog. Brilliant. Well done, doggy. Get your reward. You beat me. Then I go into the next one. I do another one. And the trainer there, Chris, was like, right, what we need to do is do this. He said, right, just watch. Go and stand over there. So anyway, I stand slightly further out of the way, down the field. To my error, Glyn, the handler of the dog, is in the middle of the field. Chris is in the hide. And if you can picture this, like, Glyn's in the middle of the field, Chris is in the hide. And then I'm further south of Chris, like a good ways further south, like 30 yards further south, just watching. But I'm downfield and I'm not hidden. I'm not wearing a sleeve. I have no protection. And anyway, Glyn turns to face the hide, gives the command to the dog, sends the dog. The dog thinks, you, the one with the sleeve, comes running at me full speed. And it's a big German Shepherd as well. Like, I'm talking, it's like 30, 35 kilos of dog.
I was going to say, we're not talking Yorkshire Terrier or sausage dog.
No. Literally running at 30 odd miles an hour. And by the way, like Chris has said this before, Chris is a world-class trainer, by the way. And he said that this dog would make a cracking military dog, i.e., if you wanted to train it to do so, you could teach it to rip people's faces off. Like, we're not training it to do that, so it's fine. But anyway, I stood there thinking, well, that's coming at me. Like, and he wasn't stopping. So the question is, what do you do in a scenario like that? All I did, I just stood there, crossed my arms, folded him, and just shouted, nope. And the dog just went skidding past my knees, turned around, went back to the handler, and then went into the hide properly. But Had that been an irresponsible dog, I was gone. I would have been absolutely mincemeat. Like, you know, when people go, oh, like, what animal would you fight if you had to? Like, what's the biggest animal you reckon you could take? And people go, oh, I reckon I could have a fight with a gorilla or a grizzly bear. And then some people go, oh, I could probably take a dog. It's like, no, you wouldn't be able to take a dog. You've got no chance. You've got no chance. If that dog is free to do what it wants and it knows how to get what it wants, like, you're done. Forget it. So that was my close brush.
Yeah, that's rough. And I think that's as bad as it gets as well. Because I think when people think of those scenarios, they imagine that this dog is just kind of like fairly static around them in their vicinity for them to kick. Whereas I don't really think they do that. They don't really attack by slowly walking around your perimeter, do they? So
No.
if it's
So
coming at your full tilt.
just to give you another idea of sort of like the speed of it. So like literally running at 30 miles an hour, like you could be driving along in your car and it would be running alongside you, and it'd be cruising. It'd be able to do that pace for a good period of time. So there's another exercise that we do that's called an escape. So it involves the helper, me, being sort of, let's say, 20 yards away from the dog, like on a parallel line. I then have to run off at a diagonal angle away from the dog. The dog is laid down, right? The job of the dog is, as soon as it sees the helper trying to run away, that dog has to break out of the down, chase the person, bite the sleeve, and hang on, right? I can maybe get 10 yards before that dog is on me. And that's me tanking it as well. Like, that's me actually fully sending it, like going at full speed, like maybe literally 10 yards. You take 2 or 3 steps, the dog is already halfway there. So, you know, when people think, oh, if you can run away from it, like, no, you can't. You're done. Forget it. Move on. Start your next life. Good luck. So, yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and get a video. I'll send you a video, bro. Well, I'll put that out there on my Instagram a bit next time.
Yeah.
Doing it, because like it is like the power of the animals is just, it's bonkers. It's absolutely crazy. So that was my near brush with death. Now, another one, you were talking about, you know, when you're in competition and you fly too close to the sun and you're on the verge of passing out. I sent you a video earlier, didn't I? I've seen a couple of these this week where people have been weightlifting. And by weightlifting, I mean Olympic lifting, the clean and jerk or the snatch. And should we just say legs have gone a bit wobbly? And you know, when you see people fail and normally like they just bail out, throw the bar behind them or they escape underneath it and you think, that was close, that was lucky. Well, these few that I've seen have literally been circumstances where everything's buckled, the athlete is gone, and they've essentially collapsed on the floor and the barbell has come down on top of them. Like, and I don't know whether that last one that I sent you, I don't know whether it's landed on her head and sent her brains all over the floor, or if it's just kind of just missed her or just glanced it. But it's horrible, that, isn't it? Have you seen anything like that, like in person?
I've not seen the actual plates from the bar landing on people. I've seen the bar hitting people, but not necessarily across the head. I think that could be potentially fatal, depending on what weight you're lifting. There's a very good video with me. I'm not sure if you've seen, performing a snatch in a qualifier last year, and I actually hit myself on the head on the way up.
You know, I have nearly knocked myself out on a jerk before, warming up. I had an empty bar sat across my chest, in the front rack position, and went to do a split jerk, and I just powered it up. And I'd had too much pre-workout, and I was just mega hyped, mega pumped, and I didn't get my head out of the way, and it properly twatted me in the chin. Knocked my tooth out. You know, the fake tooth I've got after I got run over by a car. It knocked that out, pops that off. So that's on the floor. And then I'm like, whoa, like properly rung my bell.
Well, to be fair, that's probably the most common that I've seen in person, where people have just smashed themselves in the chin or in the jaw doing a jerk.
And it properly hurts as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not fun. That will ring your bell. But no, fortunately, I've not seen too much of it in person where people are having plates land on them, especially landing around your head. But in those instances, like on those videos that you sent me, like how is the athlete ending up lay on the floor? I think that's the big thing. If you can stay on your feet or at least on your knees or something like that, you're far safer than if you end up landing on the floor, lay down or sprawled out or whatever, because of course you're going to get hit by a flying barbell.
I mean, the bar's got to come down sometime, hasn't it? I mean, that's
Exactly.
the thing I don't understand. Like in training, I know people pass out, but if you're prepared for it properly, your blood sugar's all right, your blood pressure's all right. Is there really a reason for you to be fainting and passing out? I don't know. I don't know whether the bright lights, the environment, the music, the noise going on. I don't know whether it becomes too much for the senses and that adds to it. And I think it's got to be multifactorial as to why it happens. But I mean, I have seen people like pass out with weights and things like that before, and it's never pretty. Like when you see them properly go, it's just like a sack of meat just dropping. I'll tell you one of the, I suppose, slightly amusing ones I have seen in person and played a part in person was there was a guy in the gym I was working in. He was wearing some grey tracky pants, and I think he was squatting, and
no.
he shit himself.
No.
He shit himself. You could just see
Oh god.
the brown stain as he squat down, and like eventually he walked off fairly swiftly after that, but he shit himself. And then there was another one. I was actually training the guy, and he was a youngish lad, and he never came back to me after this. But he was on like a trial session. He was just trying out a bit of coaching, and don't really know why, because I wasn't pushing him that hard. I wasn't like getting in his face and like, oh, come on, fucking move. No, I wasn't doing that kind of thing. It was just a very amicable, like go through the motions, have a bit of a chit chat, like do this exercise now. And he was working fairly hard, but I wasn't hammering him. And he went, "Oh, can I go to the toilet?" I was like, "Yeah, why are you asking? Just go." And he was like, "Oh, cheers, I really need the toilet." And he didn't look too well, so I don't know whether that played a role. But anyway, he came back afterwards and he was like, "I need to go. I've got to go home." I was like, "Oh, you sure? Do you not want to do this? Finish off on it?" He was like, "No, I've got to go. I've got to go." He'd had issues.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, I did feel for him. It's not nice that. I mean, certainly
No.
someone squatting in the squat rack and like shitting themselves is quite funny. Being in the situation where someone's on like an introductory session and, he's going through the motion, probably a little bit unwell in the first place, and having them experience that, not very nice. So.
No. But at the same time, whilst it's not nice, he will forever be tarnished with the I was the guy that shot myself on an introductory trial session brush now. Whereas I feel like
no one knows about it.
Well, you've just told everyone that listens to this about it. I don't mean like he will be known as that by everyone, but if he ever thinks about that situation again, or it will probably come up when he thinks about the gym and gym experiences and stuff like that. It might be something that actually still affects him. Whereas the best way to get over something like that is to to just be like, listen, you know what I mean? Like, it must have happened before someone. I'm hoping it's happened before someone. If it's not, I'm your first. I'll try and eat a little bit differently next time, and then
you should
come
own
back
it.
to the next session. Yeah, because if you do, and then you get another like 6 months down the line, you still train and stuff like that, get some really good results. It'll just be like a funny story that might not necessarily make you feel good, but you might be able to laugh about it rather than, every time you think about it, like, oh God, yeah, what will that guy think of me now? Bloody hell. Because that's the only impression you've got of him now.
Yeah. I mean, if he's listening to this, I mean, bro, like, get back in touch, come back and let's do some work. Sound guy. Let's go with it. We can move beyond that. Anyway,
Yeah, and he's not the only one. He's not the only one that's done it, as you've mentioned.
No, absolutely not. So this is perfectly sound advice for anyone that may eventually shit themselves in the gym. Because everyone, let's face it, everyone has an effort fart. Like that's happened to many a person. Many people have thrown up. Many people have, let rip whilst lifting, and it happens. These things happen. Like we're doing horrendous things to our bodies in the process of being better. So you have to get the shit out. Get the shit out of the system. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap that up there for today. We have a ton of weird, random stuff to speak about, which we're going to do in the next episode, including 100-kilometer ultra run record. We have certain things to say about certain trainers in the industry demonizing specific foods, specific exercises. The effects of not praising high achievers. That's going to come quite high up on the topic list. And then I would say the concept of being in the wrong environment and not being appreciated for what your capabilities are. I feel like that's another key one that we're going to be delving into. So hopefully you've enjoyed episode 57, listening to me and Chris talk about speed training and the consequences of being lost in that middle ground. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you want to speak to us about any training, our online coaching programs, you can get in touch with us via Instagram. Our handles are at the bottom of the description on this podcast. If you want to look at any of the other stuff that we've got available, whether it's the training program downloads, you can have a look at those. They're all on the Linktree information. If you click that link and follow that, that will take you to where you need to be. For now, for this episode, that is it from me. Chris, any final words?
Live long and prosper.
It's absolute sound. What a gem. What an absolute gem. And while you're prospering, if you would like to find your way to subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review if you enjoy what we do, if you feel like my sound quality has been better this week, that'd be sick. We hugely appreciate it. And we will be back again with another episode soon. Live long and prosper, guys. Take care.